Hello, hello. Hope everyone is ready, all strapped in and strapped on. Uh, Let me just check, and I'm gonna make sure that we're actually broadcasting. I still don't trust this, so I'm gonna wait for my YouTube screen before I really do anything. Okay, it's working, sort of, somehow. Hi. I didn't think I'd actually gone this long without putting up a video, so I want to at least have one video for the month of August. So we're doing this uh, instead of any of the regular stuff. Um, yeah, it's been one hell of a month. I've been very tired, uh, very weird mental health wise. Had a manic episode, and then I had a depressive episode, and sandwiched between the manic episodes was more depressive episodes. It was pretty weird, yeah, things have not been prioritized well. I guess that comes with being disabled and not having case management for 6 months now. I hope that ends soon. Hopefully, my firm can actually allow people in their office. That would be nice. Because they're not allowed in my building. Yeah. So that was my crappy month. Although I did have a good weekend. Went out. I posted photos on Twitter. You've seen all that crap. Hope everyone has had an okay lockdown. I hope financial woes have not hurt too much. Hello, dear Alt Trekkie. Excuse me. I have my window open. I don't know if you guys can hear it or not. I hope my sound is fine. But the train went by like an hour ago, so it should be fine for 2 more hours. If it comes back, I'm sorry. There's nothing I can do about it. Oh yeah, I'm doing okay. Glad things are okay with you over in Germany. As I was just saying, I had a bad mental health week last week. I ordered out way too much. Part of that is my fault because I spend so much money when I order out, because I try to, like, I have a rule, especially right now, that I tip delivery drivers so that the minimum amount they would need to like buy a small item off their own menu, right? Like the Five Guys driver can buy a French fry order if they get hungry, right? Like they can sit there, they can be really hungry maybe, and they'll say, "Oh crap! Oh wait, the fat girl gave me $4. I can buy French fries or something." That's like my rule, right? And any place that's open for carryout, I still try to leave like $1 in the tip jar or something, because they shouldn't have to be open right now, but they have to be because that's just how the economy works. So I try to be extra generous to those people who make our lives easier. So there was that. So yeah, I spent a lot of money last week on delivery because I had no food in the house. I hate Grubhub. I just want that to be clear. I ordered from them 4 times, and they screwed up 3 of my orders in some way. One delivery driver called me 3 times because he didn't know how to find my apartment building, which concerns me because it's a big apartment building. My fries explode. The second one, my fries exploded all over the delivery driver's car. I don't think that was his fault. I think that was the restaurant's fault because I ordered a lettuce wrap instead of a burger, like just replacing the bun with lettuce. And it leaked, and I think the bag just ripped. That wasn't his fault, I don't think. But I ended up not getting my fries that day. And the other one, their interface was screwed up. Grubhub is a delivery app over here. any business, any restaurant who does not have their own delivery can sign up with Grubhub, and they have their delivery drivers handle all the restaurants' delivery work, which is really important right now because we didn't have Grubhub in my city. And it's not like it's not a large city, but it's not a small city either. It's like 40,000 people. And then there's like another 30,000 in the metro area immediately surrounding our city. So it's a pretty sizable thing. So like we didn't have anything on Grubhub until the pandemic. So now everyone's on there because not many people did delivery around here. So yeah. Like I usually try to get from this local place that has free delivery because Grubhub charges like, what is it, like $5 just to use their service. So like I go with the people who don't screw me up, but there's only so much pizza you can have, right? You need to get like burgers and chicken and stuff some other days. Yeah. But anyway, I had to go out today anyway because the rent is due, so I had to get that taken care of. So I actually had to go shopping. No excuses today. Although I did have a good weekend. I got to hang out with friends for the first time in forever. I think I went to one person's birthday party like in February, and beyond that, it's like 2 years out there. So yeah, that was my first date night in a long time. We watched She-Ra. That was fun, right? I can't believe that there are lesbians who have not seen She-Ra. As long as you wore a mask, everything's okay. Yeah, I mean, some of the stuff I got up to, masks were probably not helpful. Nah, it wasn't that bad. It's been a long time for me. I'm way too tight. Anyway, let's see. What do I want to talk about today? Oh, right. Let's go to the title of the video here. JOESTRADAMUS, predicting the future in 2013, which I did. This isn't from exactly today, but this showed up on my Facebook memories, which I still use Facebook sometimes. I don't use it a lot anymore. I've mostly abandoned it for Twitter because Twitter is at least a little better at not pruning your feed. They're starting to get worse, I've noticed, over the past year, but they're still better than Facebook is because Facebook is fashy bullshit. Yes, I predicted the campaign of Joe Biden. I didn't predict Joe Biden would win the nomination, but I did predict that this would happen. Anyway, my Facebook memories. I'm just going to read my post here. Did I share it? I could probably share it. Maybe? Probably. Let me open a Chrome tab because that's a lot easier than just sharing my Opera tabs. I can just share the whole Chrome window with you guys. I should have done this before the stream, but I'm awful at my job. This isn't my job. I was making that up. Yeah, you'll see my name on Facebook here, but like I said, I don't use it. I don't care. Everything's set to private anyway because, like I said earlier in the stream, I'm disabled. And the government really likes to spy on you on your social media when you're disabled because it doesn't matter if last week I was so stressed and traumatized I couldn't leave my house. The fact that I had one weekend where I ate pizza might be enough to throw at me at my next review because that's how disability works. Now Trump wants to get rid of that, so that's fun. Let's see. While I get this set up, I'll read chat. Deralta Trekkie, by the way, just out of curiosity, when will we get the new Andromeda review? I'm just going to show that on screen. It's all scripted. I can tell you that much. I have to get around to recording it. I'm sorry. This month was a bad month for me. It's going to be forced perspective still. That's going to be an interesting one just because of its commentary on like colonial heritage, right? And the amelioratory power of misbegotten strength. That's going to be a really interesting one. But that script's all written, so it'll be coming out. That's the next one. And the one after that will be, I'll tell you right now, is going to be, shoot, I forgot the title already. Not The Pearls That Were His Eyes, that's a different one. Not Heaven Sent, wow. I'm blanking on the Rev Bem episode in season 1. That's what I'm trying to say here. That's going to be the one after that. Because I love Rev Bem, and we haven't gotten to talk about Rev Bem. Devil Take the Hindmost. That's the name of it. I knew I'd come up with it eventually if I clicked enough things. So that'll be the one after, which I look forward to. Okay. So I'm going to post this in the stream. Application window. I do not need to share audio. Okay. That should be yes. This will show you nothing about me. Anyway, I'll read this out for you because it's probably too small for you to read, especially if you're doing it on like a mobile device. But this is just my whole rant post from 2013. As you can see here, August 17th, 2013. This was long after I had basically retired from politics. So, starts out with, allow a girl to dip her toe back into politics for a moment. It has increasingly become my opinion that the current state of the Republican leadership is behaving like they don't want to be the first chopper out of Saigon while making sure that they have reservations on the last. While I am at odds with the Tea Party often due to my nature as a human being, I do believe in their right to take control of their political party via force of numbers and effort. Which I still do believe, right? The Tea Party, if they want to take over the Republican Party and they have the means to do it, then they should be allowed to. They should be allowed to be dumbasses. Republicans seem increasingly frustrated by them. We're reading from the post again. But that is because they cannot simply jettison the Tea Party, even though it is completely in their right to do so as well. We call it a party because it is private, even if we have institutionalized their existence. The root of the problem for them is that already outnumbered by Democrats almost 2-1, stretching back to the 70s, so don't try to blame that on the Tea Party either, they simply can't hack off what amounts to several limbs. It is the nature of the two-party system itself that created the modern Tea Party. It is a rather unhealthy system of the nature of the two-party state. They are also a product of the information age, wherein we can, in real time, look for a laundry list of things our politicians do that we disagree with. Call it elitism or denial or whatever else, but the old guard of Republicans are increasingly finding themselves on the defensive for not being uncompromising enough, and they feel that somehow they must hold their ground. Pausing the reading here. Remember, this is back in the days of, this was before the Tea Party officially, with the Freedom Caucus, through the through the majority Republicans, the moderate Republicans, under the bus. Way back. Shoot. I am forgetting so much right now. I'm going to have to look up his goddamn name. And I'm going to hate myself when I find it. Because I'm going to be like, oh yeah, I should have frickin' remembered. John Boehner, that's right. When John Boehner was Speaker of the House, he and Obama basically by themselves, through the force of getting everyone to work together, kept the government moving. If it wasn't for those two people, this would have happened a lot sooner. Yeah. Going back to the reading, that they can talk out their differences even though the Tea Party doesn't have the stomach for lengthy campaigns. They nominate, elect, and before the next 2-year cycle is over, oust their golden children with new golden children who will, quote, get something done. Both sides have riddled Reagan's corpse with flagpoles so much that if you listen to the rhetoric, you'd assume he had split personalities. And yet Republicans are trapped in the Cold War mentality. They feel themselves the same minority party that never held Congress once since the Great Depression, the dry spell that ended in 1994. They avoid the internal conflict, I think, because they see their opposition as the bigger fish. The 6-year election cycle is killing them as well. They focus on watch hawk activists who inundate their town halls with mundane questions and offices with birther phone calls. It is no small irony that in having to constantly play appeaser, they are failing to get anything practical done. This is the part that's really prophetic. I am increasingly convinced that we are exiting the so-called era of divided politics. It is worse than ever, you might say, but I feel most of what might be deemed moderate Republicans are going to find themselves first as refugees, then as a powerful voting bloc inside the Democrat Party. The Tea Party can throw up their "No Girls Allowed" sign and increasingly watch as their membership gets bored, grows old, or comes to a reformation of ideas. The vast majority of history in the United States has been that of single party, with opposition that tries to weigh down the majority from skewing into the curb. Such a state existed for the 60 years following Jefferson, the 70 years following Lincoln, and the 3 decades spanning FDR to Johnson. That is my rant for the day, and I didn't rant for a mile before this, but I feel compelled today. End of post. Okay. So I kind of want to talk about this. Let me remove that screen. There we go. John Boehner, he was the Sergeant Schultz in Hogan's Heroes. Yeah, that's kind of funny. John Boehner. So yeah, I do want to talk about that bit, the last bit at the end, where I predicted the rise of Project Lincoln, who are stealing my shtick, totally stealing my shtick. I was here first. I was here like 2 years ago, giving everyone shit about the Republican Party and Donald Trump and the fascies. And I was a Republican insider once. I deserve credit for the Lincoln Project. Thank you. Please donate. Good night. Don't donate. I don't actually take money. I got into a fight with PayPal the last time someone tried to donate me money. So don't donate me money. Anyway, so one of the things I want to talk about, Project Lincoln, Lincoln Project, it's whatever. Project Lincoln sounds more badass. So here's the thing with like the Lincoln Project and Joe Biden's campaign that people don't seem to be looking at. We're going to borrow some intellect from Jim Sterling. Thank God for him. That we're going to look at Joe Biden's campaign like it's Activision. This is really unflattering, but Activision has proven to be really effective. Oh, I know, Daryl Strecky, you are a German guy. Let me just post your question because I'm not being mean. Who has no idea about American politics? See, he said it. I'm not making fun of him. Sometimes has no idea about German politics. Yes. Lincoln Project is the group of Republicans. They are very establishment Republicans. Like, these are people who worked for George W. Bush, who are trying to get Joe Biden into the presidency, and they're working to crush the Senate majority because they too have seen that it's not just Trump, it is the entire Senate and Congress that need to go. These are the people like John Boehner, the former mentioned Speaker of the House, who had to fight against the Freedom Caucus, which is where the Fasci and the Tea Party live. So yeah, they've been running a lot of ads and various campaign efforts. Like they'll run a fundraiser. They were in one the other day where they were like, "Hey, anyone who donates to us in the next whatever, we're going to raise the next $1 million, and it's going to go directly towards ousting Lindsey Graham because he's a bootlicker." And that was how they raised money, because they told everyone, they're like, "Hey, if you donate right now, I guarantee you that $10 is going to go towards getting rid of Lindsey Graham. By the way, Lindsey, did you fuck guinea pigs? What happened? What does Trump have on Lindsey Graham that is so damning that he turned into such a bootlicker?" So the complete establishment should go and be replaced with Joe Biden and his girls and guys. That's basically how Project Lincoln is treating this. Even though they are all like really hardcore lifetime Republicans, like me, they have come to the conclusion that you need to change the current system, and the best way to do that is to go back to one-party politics, which is what the United States is pretty much used to, and let the Democrats flood every office so they can institute some reforms, maybe get some workable bills passed. And once that has happened, then you can maybe look at rebuilding the second party, the opposition party. But I only know Lindsay Ellis. But but the plan is, once they get rid of the opposition party, because the way divided politics, which is what we call the sixth era, it's not really popular to call it divided politics anymore ever since Trump got elected, because it's very obviously a neoliberal Republican pattern at that point, from Reagan to Bush to Clinton to Bush to Obama to Trump. It's all very clearly very neoliberal, very driven by market forces. So it's not proper to call it divided politics anymore. But that was what we used to call it like 20 years ago. Don't know, that doesn't sound too democratic for me. Maybe I'm just stupid. Well, you know, it's kind of the American way, honestly. The United States has almost never had a proper two-party system. It's not built to function that way. It's not built with political parties in the machine of the Constitution, so to speak. Everything that is about parties is completely informal. Everything that we derive from party politics, like the UK, for example, or Israel, I think Germany also runs this way, where you vote for parties explicitly. And, you know, in the UK, you vote for lists. In Israel, I know they just tell you who's going to be prime minister. Right, you have two parties, the winner and the loser. And then there is the Green Party. That's true. Don't forget the Libertarians. They're really funny. So anyway, the way, like, that has like parties built into your structure of government, but the United States doesn't have that. We are, in theory, voting for individual people. Now, those individual people caucus which is what we call it when they ascribe themselves to a voting bloc. Like in the state of Maine, our legislature, we have the Democrats and the Republicans, but we have 4 caucuses in the legislature, even though it's just the 2 parties and a couple independents. Because some of the Democrats and the independents group up and they caucus together. They still vote in caucus line with the majority Democrats, but they aren't like, just because they are affiliated to that party, that doesn't mean they have to caucus that way. How does one write caucus? I will write it in the chat for you. Caucus, like that. So caucuses are groupings of politicians, and that is the informal system under which the United States runs. Like, our parties are not strict in that sense. So for most of US history, there was a small period of divided politics after Washington, although many people kind of ascribe Washington's second term to the Federalist Party, because his cabinet became much more federalist at that point. The Republicans and the Federalists split very early on, but Washington kept both in his cabinet. Thomas Jefferson, the leader of the Republicans, was the Secretary of State, and Alexander Hamilton, who was the leader of the Federalists, was the Secretary of the Treasury. So that was the big rivalry. Maybe you've seen Hamilton. I don't know if that's in Hamilton. I haven't seen Hamilton. I don't care about Hamilton. But like, that was a brief period of 2-party politics. But after that, the Federalists took over completely. John Adams, Washington's second term, they were the Federalist presidents. And then once Jefferson ousted Adams in 1800, then there was 60 years of Democrat rule. The Democrats controlled the White House most of that time. Hamilton, the guy whom the musical is about. Yes, Alexander Hamilton is one of the most important of the founding fathers. He institutionalized most of the things that we consider American institutions, like the Treasury, because he had the Treasury Department under his thing. Alexander Hamilton, the musical will never tell you this, but Alexander Hamilton was a very open monarchist. He thought that we should have an elected king. And he wasn't shy about that when he wrote the Federalist Papers, or his Federalist Papers anyway. But anyway, I'm getting off track here. So that happened. There were some Whig presidents after the Mexican-American War, because the Whig Party was very abolitionist, and they were very small business oriented, and they were also pro-Manifest Destiny. So question, was it better during Democratic rule or Republican rule? That will depend on your view of things. A lot of American history has mostly been the rest of the country battling the South, politically speaking, and literally at some points. But one of the examples of Democratic rule, the Democrats, after the Great Depression, kicked Hoover out. Hoover was the last Republican president until Richard Nixon in '68. Or no, not. I'm missing Eisenhower, but Eisenhower is kind of an apolitical, because Eisenhower is, the war hero, like the war hero. So he's the exception. But during that period, from FDR, Democrat, Truman, Democrat. Then there was Eisenhower, but then it was Kennedy, Democrat, Johnson, Democrat. So there was this period of Democrat rule, and the Democrats held the House of Representatives I believe it was from 1953 all the way until 1994 during Bill Clinton's rule. Sorry. And anyway, yeah, so like even in those periods, like the Senate and the House for most of the 20th century was completely Democrat run. Didn't matter who was in the White House. Like Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush, they had to, even though they were like huge neolibs, well, Reagan was a huge neolib. Bush was much more moderate and sensible about most things, like not invading Germany during the unification, like Thatcher wanted to do. But anyway, because even though like Ronald Reagan was like the huge neo-lib guy, he had to deal with the fact that Congress was always a Democrat Congress, so he had to like ameliorate with them. He had to acquiesce to a lot of their demands, but he still got his agenda through because the presidency is super frickin' powerful. But it still took another 15 years for the Republicans to at least get control of the House of Representatives. And ever since 1994, we've had what we've kind of stopped calling officially the era of divided politics, where one party controls the House, one party controls the White House, one party controls the Senate. It's not necessarily the same. So whoever the opposition party is can, as we've seen the past 20 years, they just obstruct, and obstruct. The American system of government is not designed to do that. It's not designed to deal with that kind of separation of powers, because like you look at the UK, the UK has basically dictatorship by election, right? Like the majority party wins the election, and then for the next 5 years, they basically do whatever they want. The opposition does put up fights sometimes. They don't. They occasionally might get their bills through, but wait a sec. The U.S. and Thatcher wanted to invade Germany during the unification. I won't pretend to pronounce that German word. So was David Hasselhoff standing on the Berlin Wall, their biological weapon? I don't know, maybe. That's actually one of the moments that, like, I know people like were cheering when HW died a few years ago. That's how it's done in Germany too. Like I know. Anyway, I know how people cheered when HW died a few years ago, but he basically stopped a huge war over the unification of Germany, because Thatcher really wanted to get in there and wanted to make sure that there was no unified Germany, because she was still scared of Nazis. And Bush, to his credit, de-escalated the Soviets by saying that maybe we should leave it up to German people to decide what to do with Germany. And that basically de-escalated NATO's posturing at the time. It's not well remembered. We kind of like to remember it as a very happy time when the wall came down and, you know, the Cold War was ending. But it was like, it was really scary for a few months there. Anyway, yes, that's how it's done in Germany too, right? Because, and the reason you have that dictatorship by majority is because you do allow the parties to be part of the Constitution, or, you know, the foundational documents that govern everything. Thatcher was kind of right to be concerned because the Nazis are back. Yeah, that's true, but I'm not really going to give that point to Margaret Thatcher. Not really. Not for the reasons that she was afraid of, right? Like there weren't like too many Nazi sleeper agents like, aha, now is our time. It wasn't like that. This is more long game than that. But yeah, so the problem with the American government is that we really don't have the institutions to deal with that, because we aren't built for that same kind of dictatorship of the majority. We are built on the principle of, as Ben Franklin put it, ambition checking ambition. They thought that people in the Congress would fight the president much more because they thought that powerful people would seek to accumulate more power for themselves. And that was true for a long time. It's not true anymore. There's actually several periods in American history, the late 1860s after Lincoln got assassinated and the very unpopular Andrew Johnson, came into power. The Congress stripped him of much of his executive power because he was sympathetic to the South. So by default, the most powerful person in the country was the Speaker of the House. So the position Nancy Pelosi holds today. There was a period of about 20 to 30 years where that was the most powerful office in America, not the president. And that didn't really change until Teddy Roosevelt came into office. There was a slow accumulation in the 1880s with Chester Arthur, who inherited the position after Garfield died. And he broke up a lot of the city bosses who ran politics and the customs enforcement and stuff like that. Like, there were really entrenched party interests, and he broke them up, and that made his office stronger by default. He basically took more direct control over the Treasury Department. But basically, for about 30 years or so, the Speaker of the House was much more powerful than the President of the United States. And so those ambitions were able to check each other, even though they were part of the same party, usually. Yeah, the US system is not built for that. So the best way to deal with the fashy garbage that's happening right now is for basically the country to come together, flush one party out, and I'm sure no one outside of Germany knows who our Bundespräsident is. I'm taking a stab. I have no idea how to pronounce that word. You're right, I don't. Sorry. Is it the guy who's supposed to take over for Merkel? Is that who it is? I'm only vaguely aware of that person. But yeah, that's the plan basically of the Lincoln Project, is flush a minority party all the way out. Flush the minority party out, and then you can use the single party system, reassert itself, and then we can do a bunch of reforms, and we can maybe adjust the Constitution as needed, hopefully, to get that. Frank Walter Steinmeier. Okay. I will try to keep that in mind. I'll probably forget. I'm sorry. Anyway, so this comes back to what I was saying about Stirling logic with Activision. Because if you watch Jim Sterling hates loot boxes especially, and microtransactions in general in video games. And one of the philosophies of free-to-play mobile games and just general AAA video games in general these days, because they're microtransaction to hell, One of the big things is breaking people's psychological barriers, right? The first dollar is the hardest dollar to get out of someone using a free to play game or a free to use app or whatever. That's the hardest thing to do, is to get them to break their mental block. The guy mostly in front of a red flag. No, he's changed up his look. I think he realized around 2017, 2018 that the red and black motif was not a good look anymore. He's very much transitioned into a much more pansexual friendly, because Jim himself is pansexual. And is he gender fluid or non-binary? He's some kind of non-binary. He calls himself gender trash. So, yeah. He's definitely not on the side of the Nazis. Yeah, so he has done a lot of expose work on how game companies especially look at how to break down those walls of people who won't psychologically, but might ultimately pay microtransactions. So one of the key ways to do that they make is they do those weird like super sales where they're like, oh, here's 1,000 coins for 99 cents, that kind of thing. They try to basically take a loss, or, well, I mean, it's all fake currency, it's all bullshit. But compared to what it usually costs, they, quote, take a loss in order to get you to break your psychological barrier to then spend money on the game because you consider yourself a paying member of that community. And the other thing they try to do is they try to make spending money in the video game the socially acceptable way to behave. There are lots of procedures. I believe it was EA who tried to copyright an idea or patent, not copyright, patent an idea that they would cue people who spent lots of money against lots of people who spent no money specifically, in order to make the losing players feel like the people who spent money had an advantage, even if they technically did not. The advantage was in like MMR stacking and stuff like that. So you would prop up the team with the payers, with higher MMR people, more skilled players, against the free-to-play team, the majority free-to-play team, who had a much lower MMR, but you would hide that. You would tell them that their skill levels were equal, but they would see the paid items that they wore, the skins, the weapons, that kind of thing. And then they would feel compelled to pay in order to compete. Yeah, but what good would it do me? I mean, it's free to play. I think people should visit business economy classes. Yeah, and I mean, there are a lot of like real arguments, but like, you know, they're not necessarily banking on it working on everybody, right? The thing no one ever wants to talk about is that only about 15% of the people in a free-to-play game spend a dime. Most of the economy is driven by a very small handful of people, and they're just trying to get more of those people invested early in the game with psychological manipulation. This goes back to Joe Biden's campaign and the Lincoln Project and all those other things. Like, people are criticizing Joe Biden from the left that he's swung too far to the right, that he's courting white America too much. But what's really happening here, I think, if you use video game AAA capitalism logic on this campaign, what Joe Biden is trying to do is he's trying to break that psychological barrier that it is okay for white people to vote for Democrats. That's a very important distinction to make. This election isn't really the important one. The important one is going to be 2024. Because Joe Biden, from all indications, does not intend to run for 2 terms. I can't imagine he would want to. And he made several inferences during the primaries that he would probably only serve 1 term. He's just that concerned about Trump. So Joe Biden is not going to be around for a very long time. The big thing is to get rid of that mental block that a lot of white Americans have, because a lot of white Americans just don't vote for Democrats. And if you break that block, if they consider themselves, if not Democrats, they'll at least consider themselves cross-party voters, which is very rare in the United States, despite the fact that parties are bullshit nonsense. Even people who call themselves independent tend to vote straight ticket. They tend to vote straight Democrat or straight Republican, even if they call themselves independent thinkers. So if you get people to break that psychological block, I think that's the important part of the Lincoln Project. And I know a lot of people on the left are like, oh, I can't really support anyone who boosts the Lincoln Project because they're... It's like what we learned earlier today. You have 2 parties, the winners and the losers, right? Yeah, basically. We need to go back to that. There are people from the left who are like, well, you can't boost the Lincoln Project, but basically, if you have like racist relatives on Facebook, you should be posting Lincoln Project stuff. Because if you break that psychological barrier, like think of the Republicans as the free-to players who never spend money, and consider the Democrats the spending money on microtransactions. If you can just get them over once with a really discounted deal, and it's not much more discounted than, hey, you're not voting for Trump, then you can break the psychological barrier so that when you need them to come back in 2022 and in 2024 and in 2026, you can get them to come back and vote for the Democrats. That is kind of the plan, I think. And that's probably one of the most important things that needs to happen. If you're going to sustain this sort of cultural shift. Because right now you can't do it because there are too many people in power who are QAnon, who are just opportunistic racists, that kind of shit. So you got to shove all those people to the side. You can't get rid of all of them. Like, that's never going to happen. But if you can shove the minority so hard that the Democrats become just a supermajority, then you can move through all this stuff. You might even get enough for constitutional reform. One of the things I do have a video coming out this fall on the Electoral College in the United States. There is a way to reform the Electoral College that we don't talk about a lot because it's not been used in 110 years. 110? I think it's that long. I think it was 1907 or something like that. Anyway, you can boost the number of electoral delegates and balance out the college. Because the number of Congress people is not a constitutional restriction, right? The Constitution does not say You must have this many people in Congress. You must have this many representatives. Like it says the Senate, right? There must be this many senators. But basically, Congress has a device called the Apportionment Act. The Apportionment Act allows them to increase the size and the distribution of the House of Representatives. I have it here in the notes. Apportionment Act of 1911 was the last time we did that. QAnon were the nincompoops who believed about a pizza joint being a front for child savoring, right? They've kind of moved on. Now it's probably the same people, but that is a different conspiracy. It's not the pizza place wasn't even a conspiracy. It was a satire article that people took literally. But QAnon built on that, and there are people who think that Trump is leading the government in a secret coup to remove all of the pedophiles from power and stuff like that. Like, that's their plan. So yeah, that's that. One of the things, anyway, going back to what I was saying, like this will be in my video on the Electoral College, but I'm just previewing the data here with you guys. The argument basically is the Apportionment Act in 1911 set the number of U.S. representatives to 435. The country started with 68. 435 is a really low number. Like you compare that to the House of Commons. The House of Commons has some 600 odd members. For a country 1/5 the size of the United States. So we could, in theory, you could get a Democrat majority Congress if you get a supermajority to control the Congress. The Congress could pass a new Apportionment Act. They could increase the number of representatives to 600, 700. In order to get a near perfect representation through the Apportionment Act, you would need about 2,000 representatives. And we certainly don't need that many exactly, but it would be much more balanced because if you added people to the House of Representatives, most of those people would be going to California, Texas, Florida, and New York, who are vastly underrepresented based on their proportion of population. So like if you add 200 people to the House of Representatives through an Apportionment Act, that would mean that like out of those 200, probably a good 60 to 80 will go straight to California. So that's something that could happen if you sweep the Congress. That is a backdoor way of editing the Electoral College so that it isn't as fucked up as it has been the past 20 years. Would take pressure off the purple states. Battleground states would not be as important, even with a slight adjustment in how the representatives are distributed. And the good thing about the Apportionment Act is it's just a law, right? It's not a constitutional amendment. So all it takes is one moment of really strong political will, which is why I really like the idea of like you just need one moment where the country comes together and says, this needs to be changed. We'll sign a bill. We'll do it now. And the thing about adding 200 Congress mammals to the United States Congress is that those people aren't going to vote themselves out of an office, right? They're not going to willingly give up that power. So once it's in, it's locked in. So that is one way to really fix the Electoral College without going through all this nonsense that we'll have to do in order to abolish it entirely, which I don't think is a great idea, for reasons I'll get into it in the video, and B, adding states like Washington or Puerto Rico and the other territories, they would need to be encompassed somehow. I'm not sure why Guam hasn't been incorporated into Hawaii yet. It makes the most sense, but if they want it, they might not want that. I wouldn't want to force that on them, but it just makes a lot of sense because they aren't really big enough to be their own state like Puerto Rico is, or the Virgin Islands. The Virgin Islands would probably be part of Puerto Rico. But yeah, that stuff would take a lot more work. And so that's the good thing about doing apportionment. If we could get that through, that would be one reform. All the other reforms that need to happen to declaw like ICE and stuff like that, fix the justice system, get a better manner of oversight committees, that kind of stuff. All that stuff needs to happen, and the only way you can do that is if you can keep a Democrat majority in all three sections of government, not the branches, the sections, the Senate, the House of Representatives, and the presidency. It might be really hard because Trump has stacked the Supreme Court so well. They might fight at every turn, but FDR did a lot of success with the New Deal, even though the Supreme Court struck him down at almost every turn. But he still got some stuff through that they just couldn't argue against. So we'll try that. That's all I want to say, I think, today. Declaw ICE? Yeah, I hope. That's what I would hope would happen under a Democrat-led government. ICE is really off the rails right now. Too many federal agents in general. But yeah, I think that's all I really want to talk about today. Besides, Steve Shives is starting in a couple minutes. So, oh no, ICE, not ICE in the frozen water sense. ICE as in immigration and customs enforcement. They're the people who are in charge of our border patrol. But yeah, I think I'll call it here. I just talked about what I wanted. I just wanted to get something out for the month of August. So here I am on the last day of August. So yeah, everyone take care of each other. I'll keep searching and posting for various trans crowd funds. I'm focusing mostly on people who are like in need of food, right? I sympathize with people who really need transition related stuff, but right now there's just so much flood of people who don't have basic needs. Live long and prosper, Data Portal, and so say we all. Yes, indeed, so say we all. That's a good sign off. I should use something like that. I probably won't, because that would be way too classy for this show. I'll see you guys later. Thanks for everyone who came. Thank you for liking the video. Thank you for fucking with the algorithm. And hopefully the next video will come out real soon. Thanks. Bye, guys.